Hi everyone, this is Sabine from Success Tutoring, and today I'm with the CEO and founder of Success Tutoring, Michael Black. Today we're here to talk about his new book, The Millionaire Tutor. Michael, how are you today?
I'm very well, Sabine.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining us today to talk about your new book, The Millionaire Tutor.
Thanks for having me. It's very good to be here. I'm really excited to share with the viewers a little bit more about the book and share a bit of insights as well, hopefully.
Awesome. Well, let's get started with the big question, which is what inspired you to write The Millionaire Tutor?
Well, Sabine, I started Success Tutoring in a spare room in my parents' house, and it's almost been 9 years now. And in those 9 years, I've learnt so much. There's been a lot of challenges, there's been a lot of successes. They say in business that in business, you've got the highest highs and lowest lows. And the reason why I wrote the book is because I wanted to inspire other people that may necessarily be afraid to start their own business to actually go ahead and make the leap, because business is not always rainbows and sunshine. There's always going to be growth, and there's always going to be challenges, always going to be things. So the reason why I wrote the book is because I want people to learn from my mistakes and learn from the challenges that I faced starting Success Tutoring, and take it on and maybe do something with it.
That's amazing. Well, in the first chapter, you do talk about how it's not for everybody, this book, and that who it's not for and who it is for. So
Yeah.
who should walk away now and who should stay and read
Yeah,
the book?
that's a really good question. And so, for those that know me and and they've followed my journey since I started, I've always been very passionate about motivate, inspire, uplift, which are the three pillars. And so, the books that I've always read as a child, and the first book that I read, which was one of the most powerful books I read, is called The Power of Positive Thinking. And so, um, in order to be able to read and learn from these books, it's very important for the reader to be open to listening to the experiences, and also needs to be open to learning something new and taking them out of their comfort zone. Because the reality is this, Sabine. A book is designed there to challenge and to open up the minds of the reader. So every book that I've read, which are majority are nonfiction books, and they're mainly business books, is that they always open up a new door to knowledge. And so when I wrote this book, I wanted to make sure that it does actually spark some emotion and spark some feeling in the reader's mind and in themselves. So then that would actually make them, challenge their preconceived thoughts and ideas, and then they can then take the book and possibly do something with it.
That's amazing. It's almost like a self-help book for
Yeah.
people who are not really sure how to start and where to start. And on that, what would you say is the biggest misconception, misunderstanding about tutoring that people have?
Well, tutoring, most people think, and when I say, I'm a tutor, for example, they think, oh, well, tutoring must be, you're helping someone with their studies, maybe homework or assignments, and that's about it. But that's so far from the truth. Tutoring is being in the business of tutoring is not just the learning. It's actually much more than that. It's in the being in the business of people and being in relationships. And so I always say this to a lot of the tutors, and it's also embedded in our learning program, which is Success Academy, is that we need to always build strong relationships and strong rapport with the students that we have, and we want to make sure they enjoy the learning process. It's so important. Tutoring is not just education. I mean, maybe back in the days, and especially a lot of other tutoring businesses when they first started, probably when we were pretty much at school, is a lot of them focused mainly on education. But that's not what Success Tutoring does. We're not just here just to educate. We're here to motivate, inspire, and uplift. We're here to make students love the learning process and continuously to grow and develop themselves. So tutoring is not just about learning. It's more than that. It's about motivating, inspiring, and uplift. It's making them having a love for learning. Learning never stops. Learning keeps going. And so it's so important that continues to go in that pathway.
That's amazing. And you do talk a lot about mindset in your book. So why do you think mindset is more important than business skills when it comes to starting a business?
That's a really good question. So, mindset is the number one thing anybody that is going into business needs to master, because mindset is the foundational element of what makes somebody successful in business. Business is not easy. And I've said this so many times, it takes hard work. Okay. It takes hard work. And so you're going to have the highest highs and the lowest lows. And so that's why it's so important to understand that mindset, being able to, to control your mind allows you to become a better business person and somebody that can adapt to life's challenges.
That's amazing. And what would you say is the most challenging part when it comes to having that business mindset when starting up a business, especially if it's your first time? So, what would you think from your experience is the most challenging part?
A lot of franchise partners that I've, worked with and a lot of people that are colleagues of mine that are in business, the number one challenge is a lot of the time they didn't grow up in business. And that is a really, really big challenge because your environment makes a very, very big difference in terms of how you grow up and what you think of things. And so it's really important, like, for people to understand that being able to level up your mindset takes a lot of time. It's not something that goes overnight. And so, I've read many, many self, help books,
Mhm.
business books, and I've been able to learn, with those books and be able to write this particular book as well, based on my experiences, but then also based on my experiences in business. So it's really, really important for people to understand that growing your mindset is not easy. It takes a long time. It's like a muscle. It's like, you go to the gym. You can't just go to the gym for 5 days and then stop. You need to keep going, and then that's when you see the results. That's the same thing with mindset.
Mm.
So it's not easy. It's quite painful actually, because then sometimes you lose friends as well. Sometimes you might, people might not understand how you think. But that's completely fine, because in order to succeed in business, you need to be able to be a little bit different from everybody else.
Okay. And so, when you talk about the mindset is not easy, and that it takes a lot to actually get to the business mindset. I'm sure that you've endured some setbacks during this time and some mental challenges. You'd have the feeling that you want to give up or something's gone wrong and you don't really have the mental capacity to deal with it. So, how would you overcome that?
Yeah, well, giving up is something that every business person faces. It's so prevalent, okay? And so by not giving up, it allows you to become a stronger person, okay? And so if you feel like you want to give up, you need to keep going. Now, you need to also have the understanding and the know-how to recognize, okay, if something's not working, you've got to make some changes. But not giving up is one of the very principles that have made the greatest and most successful business people of this generation successful, because they don't give up.
Mm.
Because the very essence of not giving up equals success. If you don't give up, you will never fail,
That's
right?
right. Yeah.
And so it's so important for anybody to understand that and to comprehend, that philosophy.
Okay, that's amazing. And I think that also ties back into the motivate, inspire, uplift motto that Success Tutoring has. And so, how does that mean in practice for Success Tutoring franchisees?
Yeah, well, I think motivate, inspire, uplift. Those are the three words, and they're words that are never going to go away.
Mm.
They're the very foundations of what makes success tutoring success. And it is always, on the walls of Success Tutoring, which is motivate, inspire, uplift, and that's what we have. And so the reason why we have that is because we recognize education is not just about learning. It's also about making sure that students feel motivated, inspired, and uplifted. Education is a lifelong journey. It's not something that just stops when school's done. Success Tutoring, we build the foundations of learning for kids. And I want to make sure that, kids are continuously learning across, not just in Australia, but across the globe as well.
Awesome, thank you. You also mentioned that franchising is not for people who are looking for an easy ride. And so, what mindset or work ethics does one require in order to have a successful franchise with Success Tutoring?
Well, see, some people think that when you buy into a franchise, what you're doing is you're buying a printing money machine. Okay. Now, of course, when your business is very successful and it's very well, oiled, and it's making, it's generating a good revenue and good profit, that definitely, ends up happening. But what's very important is that people need to understand that you're not just buying something, you're not just buying a machine and be like, okay, just plug it in, and it's not like that.
Mhm.
Franchising gives you the systems and the processes, but it doesn't do it for you. So you need to still execute. So the way I think of franchising, and I share this with a lot of people, is like this. Imagine you go to a car dealership and you buy a really nice car, okay? And so there's two people that buy the same car, okay? So one person buys a car and the other person buys a car and they're the exact same car. Now, one of them is a professional race car driver and the other one is still, learning how to drive. So who do you think's going to perform better with the car? The one that is a race car driver or the person that's just starting to learn how to drive?
I would assume the race car driver since they got the experience.
Absolutely. And so that's the same thing with franchising. So people buy into a franchise system, okay, and it's really powerful because it gives you so many there's different tools, systems, processes, and all that. So what I'm trying to say is just because you buy into franchise doesn't mean you're going to be 100% successful. Yes, the risk is reduced. Yes, you can potential for opportunity is much higher because franchisor has made all the mistakes and they've learned from it, but it's not a printing machine. It's not a money printing machine. People need to understand that. So in order to succeed in franchising, you need to understand, okay, you've bought into a system that has a really, really good system and process. Okay. Now, the question is, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to, perform really well using that system and process and the support that you're receiving, or are you going to, um, is it going to be something new? And if it's something new, it's fine because there's a lot of training and support that's provided. But what I'm trying to say is it's how you use it rather than what it actually is.
Okay. Okay, so it kinda goes back to the person and how how well they do and how bad they want it and how bad they wanna make it work?
Yeah.
Is that what you mean?
Yeah, you need to be hungry for it. You need to be so hungry to succeed because business, I said this, it's not easy. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes hard work. And so you need to be hungry and you need to be really, really, eager
Mm.
to want it. To
Sounds like a lot of dedication and discipline is involved in running a franchise business. Do you agree?
absolutely, yeah, it takes time, it takes effort, it
Okay.
takes hard work.
Amazing. And you did mention also while you were just explaining that buying into a franchise reduces the risk when starting a business. How would you explain that for someone who is wanting to start a business but they're a little bit hesitant to take that risk?
Well, don't quote me on this. I'm pretty sure it's one of the statistics out there, but when you buy into a franchise system, you're 90% more likely to succeed than if you were to go on your own and do it, which makes sense because in the early days of Success, during the first 3 or 4 years, I was kind of making it up as I go and I
Mm.
wasn't really sure what was right and what was wrong. And so there was a lot of key mistakes that I made and I learned from them. And then that allowed me to build a franchise model that I knew was going to work and wasn't just going to work in one place. It was going to work on a multi-country basis. Now, of course, in the early days, I wasn't thinking about expanding into the United States, which we are doing right now. That wasn't the plan initially, but it was certainly my goal is
Mm.
to not just have it just in one particular place, but to continuously sort of expand. And so having a business in one suburb is not the same as having the same business in another suburb. So you need to build a system, and this is what
Mm.
eventually with the support team that I had and I continue to build up today is that you need to have a system that works not just in one area but in multiple areas as well.
Yeah, definitely. And also, how did you or why did you introduce the gym style membership model to Success Tutoring, and how has that changed the game for the franchise partners with Success Tutoring?
Well, everybody knows how a gym works. There's an app,
Mhm.
there's studios, they pay per week, and there's no locking contracts, and it's easy. Okay, and so what I find is tutoring the way tutoring was, and it still is in many countries, is it's very old school. So people pay on a monthly or a term basis or a semester basis, whereas they're not paying on a weekly basis. And so I think by being giving the opportunity for families to pay weekly, there's so many advantages. Like one advantage is that it reduces the financial burden of them having to pay for a large sum. It also increases churn rate. Our churn rate at Success Tutoring is extremely low, and that's mainly because of the fact that we're charging customers on a weekly basis. We're so confident in our service that we're saying to families, if you want to leave us, you can just give us a 2 week notice. We're not locking them into a whole term. So apart from that as well, like our Success Tutoring model has allowed franchise partners to launch locations with a set number of foundation members from day one. It's unheard of in the tutoring space where you see locations launching with 150 members in the first 3 months. Like these are huge revenue targets that our franchise partners are hitting, and they're unheard of, not just in Australia, but across the globe. This does not happen in tutoring. This happens as success tutoring, but it doesn't happen in the tutoring industry. And so by having that membership model and that membership model, it has actually revolutionized education
Mhm.
forever.
Okay, that's amazing. And so, how does Success Tutoring do tutoring differently to traditional tutoring methods or even the business models that you use at Success Tutoring? So, how is it different? How is it more modern? How does it change the education system for the better?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of key things that make success tutoring unique.
Mhm.
And so I think of them in three parts. The first is that it's a personalized learning program. This means that when a student comes into the center, they do an assessment. And that assessment is based on the national curriculum. So what that means is if the student is based in Australia, it's based in Australian curriculum. Based in New Zealand, it's based in New Zealand. Based in the United States, it's based in the United States common standards. So it is based on what they are learning at school. That's the first thing. The second is that it is a business model that is a membership-based business model. What that means is that um, parents pay per week with no lock-in contracts. And the third is that we motivate, inspire, and uplift students to reach their full potential. So we hire college, university students, and they provide the tutoring service. So we don't try to just hire sort of teachers or like teachers are great, right? But in tutoring, it's different. We're here to tutor, we're here to motivate, we're here to inspire, we're here to uplift. And so one of the key advantages that we have at Success Tutoring is being able to build rapport with the students. And so when we have young tutors that are in, their first, second, or third year of university or college, um, they can provide a really, good service that, they can relate to the student as well.
Okay,
So
that's amazing. And so, in your book, you also do talk about that same topic about hiring tutors and having that personality. So, you do talk about how tutors should be hired for personality and not just for academics. So, why do you think that? How does that affect the actual tutoring process?
yeah, well, we don't just hire based on results. We hire based on interpersonal skills. It's so important. Like it, it drives me crazy to see tutoring businesses hiring, these university students or even or college students or qualified teachers that have gotten really, really good, results, but their interpersonal skills aren't there. There needs to be a balance because you're not just there to teach, you're also there to motivate, inspire, uplift. You're there to make sure that a student loves the learning process. Now, just because you've done very well in your studies, in your final year of studies, does not mean you're going to be good at tutoring. And so we've in the past, and I've done this before, is we've hired university and college students that were not necessarily the top in their cohort, but they were certainly one of the best tutors, and that's because they had that drive and dedication. We also find that the best um, tutors that we bring on board at Success Tutoring are those studying to become teachers because they're very motivated, they're very inspired, they're ready to make a dent and create a positive impact in students' lives.
Okay, that's awesome. So, is that something that you cover in the book as well? So, sort of, if someone is going to buy into a franchise in success tutoring, sort of what to look for in tutors or even center managers to create that, like, you talked about team and how important it is to have a good team when you're running a business. Is that something that you cover in the book as well?
Yeah, absolutely. I think having a community and a team is so important. Retaining your team members is so important. And there's many ways you can retain them. And I do definitely talk about this in the book, which is, that there are different ways that you can retain team members. And so by being able to retain them, you're able to build a really, really strong community or a strong workforce that can, impact and positively impact the students.
Okay, that's amazing. And also, when you do hire tutors and sort of any team members that are on board at Success Tutoring, they go through training, like you mentioned earlier. So that's Success Academy, correct?
Yeah.
Awesome. So, what role does Success Academy play in that sense?
Well, Success Academy is a world class training platform that allows all people within the success tutoring community to learn about best practice and how to operate and own and manage a success tutoring franchise. It's a continuously adaptive system and software that we have, which has a process of an assessment process and certificates at the end, which provides a very, very good foundational understanding for the team members. Like, for example, like everybody within the HQ completes the Success Academy program. All the tutors, the managers, the assistant managers, the franchise partners, anybody that is involved with Success Tutor completes those program because it builds a very strong foundation for a successful business.
What are some of the most common mistakes that franchise partners make, and how could they be avoided to have a successful franchise?
Well, I think the first thing is franchise partners are thinking that it's easy. It's not easy. So you've got to go in. Of course, there's a lot of systems, processes, support that Success Tutoring provides, but but at the end of the day, it's not easy. You can't think something's going to be easy. It's like this idea. When you go and say a speech, for example, in front of a large audience, if you don't have a bit of butterflies in your tummy, then you're not gonna really usually perform very well. And the reason being is because um, you don't really care. Like, you need to care, and you need to also anticipate that it's actually not easy. Because if you think it's easy, you're gonna get to a point where it's like, okay, yeah, it's too easy, and then you're gonna, stop thinking about, the little things which make the bigger picture the reality.
So, for people who are looking to sort of get out of their 9 to 5 and get into business and maybe buy into a franchise, do you think the Millionaire Tutor book would be a good guide for someone who's looking into that?
Absolutely. I think it's a very good start. And I think for people that are considering, running their own business or looking to, purchase a Success Tutoring franchise or, you know, any parents, I think reading that book and the reason why I wrote that is for them. So then they can understand and learn a little bit more about, what it takes to get a business set up and some of the key learnings and challenges that I face. So I think absolutely. I think getting a copy of that book, would be great, because then they can learn more about what makes Success Tutoring unique as well, and see maybe it could be for them.
I would also like to ask you, where do you see the biggest opportunities for Success Tutoring franchises at this point? Is it Australia, the US, you mentioned, New Zealand, worldwide?
Yeah, well, there's a lot of opportunities, and so born in Sydney, that's where the brand grew up, and so we're continuing to expand in multiple countries like Australia, New Zealand, into the United States as well. And so there are other more countries and more opportunities. I mean, we've got master franchise opportunities available as well for those that are looking at taking sort of the exclusive rights in a particular country to own and operate success tutoring franchise and grow the network that way. But we're continuously growing and evolving. And so that's the most important thing. And so we, of course, have, plans to, go into the United Kingdom, Singapore, Canada, and all these other countries as well. But what's very important and what we're very, very focused on is making sure we have very strong unit economics. We're picking the right locations to open up the success during franchises, and we're building a business model that's going to last. That's not just here for 5 or 10 years. It's going to be here for generations to come and become one of the global tutoring and education businesses in the world.
Awesome, that's great. What have you found most challenging so far about going global and sort of expanding outside of Australia, so into New Zealand and maybe the US you also mentioned?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think with that sort of thing, like expanding into any country, there's a lot of cultural differences. And what's something that we recognize very early on is the importance of having a curriculum based on the national curriculum because it refers and it relates directly to students. So it's kind of like McDonald's, right? So McDonald's, operates in many parts of the world. And for example, in the United States and Australia, they've got different types of meat, whereas in India, they have chicken, for example. So that is like one example of how McDonald's does it when they're expanding. So that's the same philosophy that we have at Success Tutoring. So we make things unique based on the local market that we enter in. Like for example, going into the United States, there's a lot of people that speak that speak Spanish. And so it's really, really important that we also have, like, for example, some translations of particular marketing material and things like that. Because being able to adapt to the market is one of the key important things when you're growing a business. Thinking that the same system and process is going to work in every country, that's not always the case. It continuously evolves. And so that's the thing that we're focused on is making sure that it's locally adapted with the same philosophies and foundations success tutoring, but make sure it needs to be locally adapted.
And that's something that you discuss in your book, chapter 16, which is selling franchises like hotcakes. So, what do you mean by that?
Well, in that particular chapter, and I think it's like you sort of really focused on people that are looking at expanding their business. And so selling a franchise like hotcakes is like, it's like effectively selling them really, really quickly and continuously to expand. And that's what's effectively happening right now at Success Tutoring. We're reinvesting everything back into into the franchise network and growing the business. And so I think that's also a testament to the fact that the market is loving what Success Tutoring is doing and then wanting more of it. And that's why there are franchise partners all across Australia and in other parts of the world that are really, really eager to joining us on our mission to motivate, inspire, and uplift. And so, yes, we are selling franchise hotcakes because there are people all across the world that are recognizing the importance of it.
Mm.
They've had enough of outdated learning material. They've had enough of outdated learning methods. They've had enough of old school business methods. They are looking for something new. They're looking for something fresh. They're looking for something that's profitable and that is there for them now and into the future.
That's amazing. I mean, that sounds very appealing for someone who wanting to start a business, especially in the education system. Yeah. It sounds like there's a lot of flexibility as well, and there's a lot of room for to evolve as well. So you're talking about, modern approaches and growing. So do you think that franchise partners are a big part of that growth? And, because I do think that people bring ideas to the business and sort of success touring adapts those ideas and it's all about teamwork. Is that right?
The best ideas come from franchise partners. Most people think, oh, HQ comes up with everything. That's not the truth. The truth is, franchise partners are the single most important aspect when it comes to the business itself, because that's what builds the community. That's what builds the business. The business is made out of people. It's not made out of colors, logos, good learning material, etc. These are all things that we've got, but that's not the thing that makes success tutoring or any business successful. It is the people. And so the franchise partners are the foundational element and the cornerstone for ensuring success, not just at Success Tutoring, but for any other franchise network. I'm sure a lot of other fellow franchisors will agree with me. What makes their business the most successful is a really strong support office and franchise relationship, and everybody cohesively working together for that common goal and objective.
What are some advice tips that you want to give to someone who's wanting to leave their 9 to 5, especially to young people who are wanting to sort of go on their own and start and embark on their business journey? Well, what is some advice that you want to give, considering you started your business at a very young age and now you've made it, it's super successful. You're the first fastest growing tutoring franchise in Australia. So, yeah, what are some tips and advice you would give to someone at that young, at that age?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and that is something in the book actually, Sabine. It's actually in one of the final chapters of the book is I talk a lot about like tips, and I don't just talk about tips for people that are looking at um you know owning a success tutoring franchise, but I also look at tips for parents and for aspiring franchisors, people that are wanting to do something similar to this as well, because that's very important, being able, to be able to share that knowledge and give people a bit of an insight. Now, what are the most best tips for anyone looking at to start a business? Well, they can find it in this book because there is a lot of tips here, and this is sort of a combination of many of the experiences that I had and some of the learnings. I mean, there is a lot of noise out there. There's so many books out there that people can purchase, but I truly believe that this book, Millionaire Tutor, is a really good book for people that are looking at starting their own business, because it builds a very strong foundation and bedrock to the foundations of what makes a successful business.
Now that we've talked about who this book is for and who should be looking into it and what kind of benefits you would get into reading this book, tell me who this book is not for. So who should to turn away and not read this book?
Anyone that does not want anyone that's happy with where they are now, like if they're really happy with the 9 to 5 and they're enjoying their current lifestyle, and if they're happy with that, then they probably shouldn't read this book because it might actually upset them. This book is there to provoke. It's to provoke an emotion and provoke a response. It's not there to be nice. I'm not being very polite. A lot of the time I'm not being the most polite in this book. I'm actually being very honest and truthful, and I'm just saying how it is. I'm saying the facts as they are. And so this can upset a few people, and that's okay, and that's okay with me because I wrote this book for the ones that want change in their life, the ones that are not happy, the ones that want to change, the ones that I think, believe that they deserve more in life, that they deserve more and that they can do more with their life. They're not just there, working 9 to 5 for most of their life and then retire, because these days that's not where society's heading. People cannot sustain like that anymore, and so people are looking for something greater, and so that's who the book is for. It's for people wanting greater. It's not for the ones that are happy with where they are and they're like, okay, yeah, well, I'm okay with where I am now. Okay, cool. Well, if you are, then probably don't read this book.
Okay. Would you think that this book is something that 17-year-old Michael Black, just graduated out of high school, something he would read or he would need to read?
There's this thing, right? Like it's like, and a lot of people that are, sort of in my circle and that run businesses, they also challenge me and they ask me this question. They say, would your younger self be proud of where you are now? Like would your younger self be somebody that looks up to you now? And or would, so I think the answer to that is yes. I mean, there's so much more to do. Um, we're just getting started. I truly believe we're only 1% there. We're just getting started. This is just the foundations. We're just building the foundations here because there is so much to do in education, not just in Australia, but across the globe. We're here to motivate, inspire, and uplift. And so, would Michael, younger self, would be proud? I think so. I think he would. I think would he look up to where I am now? Yes.
Mhm.
But where I am now, I'm thinking, no, there's so much more that Success Tutoring is capable of and the team is capable of.
I mean, that's amazing to see that the CEO of Success Tutoring is all about improving and there's always, room to get better and go global and improve. So I feel like that does reflect the business model and the ethics that you bring into the business and sort of the franchise partners that come into the business as well. Do you sort of look for the exact same work ethics and attributes in someone when they're going to buy a franchise?
Well, the thing is, like a successful franchise partner is somebody that is looking for something more than where they're currently at, and they're wanting to make a positive difference in the lives of their community. It's someone that's like very well connected in the community and loving, being, part of education. But most of the franchise partners we bring on board are actually mums and dads that, work in corporate, looking to get out of the 9 to 5 and own their own business. And a lot of the time as well, they work together to make it work initially because, if they're both working 9 to 5, it's hard. Running a business is hard if you're both working 9 to 5. And I actually talk about this in my book. I mean, there is a part. I'm not going to spoil the book too much, but there is a part in the book that does talk about that. It talks about, like, for example, mum and dad both, working 9 to 5, and how to actually be able to get out of that 9 to 5 because, and I'm sure you've heard this a lot of times, it's a rat race. Working 9 to 5 is a rat race, and most people don't want to do that for the rest of their life. People want more. And I always say, the best time to start is now. Um, the best time was actually yesterday, but the second best time is now. And so making that leap is important because it's never going to be the perfect time to make that leap. There's always going to be an excuse,
Mm.
but you only live once. I mean, how long does anybody, live these days? 80, 90, 90 if you're lucky. So you've just got to give life your all. You've got to give it your best shot. You've got to give it your all. You've got to back yourself. You got to believe that you can do it. And if you do that, you'll live a really good life with no regrets.
That's amazing. And I do think that that's inspiring, not just to parents who are wanting to leave the 9 to 5, but also really in generation who's wanting to also not really go into that 9 to 5, but just get started on their business how you wanted to do when you were 17. So I do feel like this book would be a great guide for people who are wanting to do that, especially younger people. Would you agree?
Absolutely, and I think young entrepreneurs, there should be more young entrepreneurs because and the way I think about it is as well is that when you're young, you can do so much. Like you've got so much time. But I speak to so many people and they say, when you have kids and you're married, like your time actually shrinks. Like things go faster and you're no longer just caring about yourself, you're also caring about a family, like kids and when you're married like that, there's a lot of more responsibilities. But doing it now is actually one of the best times because what you're doing is you're allowing yourself to focus your time on something like this and not having to split focus as well because being able to focus on one thing, there's a lot of power in that as well.
Mhm. Let's dive into some chapters of your book and read a few bits and pieces if you're happy to do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. So in chapter 9, there's a hot take about politics where you say politics is cancer. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Starting Success Tutoring, the goal has always been the same. It's to motivate, inspire, and uplift students. And so, what I find in organizations that continue to grow is that overwhelmingly there becomes some politics internally, and people have conflicting views and they have conflicting, um, you know, goals, and so that is a really, really big problem. And so in this particular chapter, what I'm actually referring to is I'm actually sharing with the readers the importance of having a very, very clear and simple goal that everybody should be working towards. Because you never want any organization or any franchise network, anything where people um have these like they're trying to undermine for the sake of undermining because the fact is in any great organization everybody needs to have that same vision and goal moving forward. Now the way you get to that can sometimes change and people need to of course have the understanding and the ability to recognize that when it's time to brainstorm ideas, that's great. But then when it's time to actually execute, there needs to be somebody that makes a decision to make sure that the company is heading in the right direction. So politics effectively is cancerous to any organization that where politics becomes a situation where people are doing it for their own personal benefit. Because at Success Tutoring, our goal is very, very simple and direct. It's to motivate, inspire the students across the globe and really make an impact in their lives. And anybody that undermines that or tries to you know not allow Success Tutoring franchise partners and HQ to achieve that, then it becomes a huge problem for the organization.
Okay, interesting. And then you also do mention in chapter 8, you did just say something about execution. Chapter 8 talks about ideas are worthless without execution. Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah. And I really like this chapter because what it actually shares with the readers is that like a lot of people think that a business is successful because of the ideas, and that's so far from the truth. I thought that as well when I first started. I mean, when I was studying at the University of Sydney, I went to an incubator program for young entrepreneurs that are looking at getting started. And I said to this person, "Hey, I have an idea." He said, "Okay, what is it?" I said, "Oh, I really don't want to share it with you because I'm a bit worried someone will steal it." And he said to me, "Well, mate, it's not about the idea, it's about how well you execute." I mean, Facebook was not the first social media network. There was MySpace. There was other. So it's not about your idea, it's about how well you execute. And so in a franchise system, you get processes and systems. You don't just get an idea, oh, this is how you do it. You get a system and a process on how to execute. And so execution is the most important thing. The idea, it could be a great idea. It might even be a terrible idea. That's not the problem. Even if it's a terrible idea, if you have really good execution, you can probably make it work actually. So execution is really important. And actually in the book, on page 65, there is I talk about the execution DNA. If you want to execute, what sort of DNA do you need?
Okay, interesting.
And that is really, relevant to a lot of people that are looking at, running a very successful business, because a lot of people, especially in franchising as well, they make people sign NDAs. At Success Tutoring, we don't. There is no NDA. We don't have an NDA. There's a reason for that. It's because we believe that even if somebody goes out, and tries to copy, which a lot of people have tried to copy other businesses like Facebook, Apple, like you can't copy businesses like that because they've got execution to a point where you can't compete with them. And so we believe that, the idea is not the most important. It's actually worthless. It's the execution is the way that you make it happen.
Okay, interesting. So, what is the DNA for success, as you mentioned on page the 65, the execution DNA?
Well, without trying to spoil it too much, there's three types of DNA for success. So the first is dreamers, second is noisemakers, and the third is achievers. And so those are the three elements of or three types of people that are looking at running a business. Now, so a dreamer is somebody that always dreams. A noisemaker is somebody that continuously thinks about different things. They might change their mind, but they never actually do anything. And then the third, which is A, is achievers. And those are the ones that have a fine balance between dreamers and noisemakers. And so that's DNA. Dreamers, noisemakers, and achievers. DAA. That is the DNA of
Wow.
success.
Okay, interesting. And just on that same topic as well, you do mention talking about the three success pillars.
Yep.
Do you mind sharing a little bit about this without spoiling too much of that chapter?
Yeah, for sure. So the three success pillars, and in any franchise network, and I always make sure that everybody, knows this, is that the success is not based on the success of just customers. It's not just based on franchise, but it's also based on head office. So it's based on combination of many things. So there's three pillars, and this is what builds a very strong business. The first is satisfied customers. The second is profitable franchise partners. And the third is a really good, strong HQ that is able to facilitate a really strong business model where the business continues to grow and achieve its targets. Because if one of those three key stakeholders are not happy, then you've got a bit of a problem on your hands. Like the business is not, sustainable. And this is why we always think, always working on the unit economics of Success Tutoring to ensure that it continuously provides a very strong, profitability for franchise partners, customers are happy, and the HQ continues to achieve their, ambitious goals.
Okay, amazing. And do you think that that's something that's implemented and reflected in success tutoring?
Absolutely. And I think, those three key stakeholders are the very foundation of a successful franchise network. And so as Success Tutoring, we're always making sure that those three key stakeholders are continuously, growing and are satisfied. Otherwise, it can definitely, affect the business.
Mhm. Well, thank you for sharing a little bit about that as well. And I do want to dive into a little bit into part four a little bit, where you talk about the industry insights. In chapter 19, you talk about what the government would not tell you.
Yeah. So, and I did warn everybody as well. I did mention that there are some things here that are going to provoke some different thoughts. And so, the government and the way that the education system is created is mainly based on the government. And so the reality is that the education system, in my opinion, is broken. Okay. The reason why success tutoring continue to grow is not just because we motivate, inspire, and uplift students, but also because we have a system that is broken. There is an education system that is broken. And even if that is fixed, tutoring will continue to grow because that is really important. It's becoming one of, part of society, but it is broken. And so in this book, I do mention why it's broken. I explicitly even give examples of why it's broken. And do I provide a solution? I might be providing some solutions, but maybe not necessarily, because there are some issues that the whole world is facing when it comes to education, and there may not actually be any solutions for it at the moment, but maybe there might be solutions in the future.
Okay, that's amazing. So you did mention that this book would challenge some of your beliefs about business and the education system and a lot of that. So is that something that comes from your personal experience with those things?
It sure does,
Mm.
yeah. And as a student, everybody goes through, each grade and they learn the different things. And so you hear this so many times. Students say, well, where am I going to use this in real life? And that is a very, very, that is a really good question. And most teachers can't answer that question. They're like, well, you're going to need to use, where are you going to use Pythagoras theorem? I might need to use it for maybe a bit of, mathematical problem solving skills and things like that. But there are other ways to build mathematical problem solving than having to use a Pythagoras theorem where you're not going to use it. And so, um, that is one aspect of why it's broken. Another aspect is, why do students have to go from grade to grade? I mean, why can't they accelerate depending on their, ability? It's very difficult for students in Australia and other countries to go from one grade level to another. Um, and most of the time when they're at school, they're spending a lot of time doing things that aren't learning as well,
Mm.
which affects their like, you know, their learning, like, efficiency, so they might as well be using that time doing other things, like, for example, learning an instrument, learning a new language, playing sport, but they're stuck at school having to wait for the teacher to, finish what they're doing or respond to the other student, so there's a lot of time wasted. I estimate many, many years are being wasted of the years in not just Australia, but across the globe, where they're in the education system and they're just in the education system for way too long. I think it can definitely be shortened, and that's from the experience of being, working and building success tutoring. Students can definitely, learn on a much faster rate.
Okay. So in that sense, do you think that tutoring goes hand in hand with the school system, or do you think it kind of opens up a new insight?
Well, as success tutoring, it's based on the national curriculum, so it's based on the Australian curriculum, and so and homeschooling is becoming more prevalent now. Um, we find that with the learning programs of Success Tutoring, because it's personalized, what it does is it personalizes it based on the student's ability. So regardless of what grade they're in, so whether they're in grade 5 or grade 11, regardless, based on the assessment that they've done, and they can progress through each of the different courses. So it does make it much easier and more efficient as well. So they can progress. It is based on national curriculum, but they can certainly progress to higher levels. Whereas at school, you can't do that.
Okay, amazing. And finally, I do want to ask you, what's your message to someone who's listening and they're thinking, maybe this is my chance to escape the 9 to 5?
Well, first thing is grab a copy of this book, because this book will change your life. I've read so many books and they've changed my life, and I've written this book to change other people's life. So I believe this will change your life. Read it, because there's a lot of insight in here, okay? And there's a lot of learnings. And if you read this, you might find out actually success tutoring is for me, or you might think maybe it's not for you. So there are some, key philosophical things and values that are placed in this book that may relate to some people, may not. And so read the book and find out. And yeah, if you want to join us on the mission to motivate, inspire, and uplift students, go for it, because we'd love to have passionate franchise partners that are there to make a difference in the world.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Michael. And thank you so much for sharing about your new book, The Millionaire Tutor.
Thanks a lot, Sabine.
Thank you.